This is Fantology.
You may have heard of us.
All right, and welcome back to Westeros, small folk. This is Stephen, your host with Fantology Podcast, and I have my lifelong friend Josh here. We are breaking down episode 1, season 2 of House of the Dragon, aired on Sunday. This is coming out a few days later, so it can kind of serve as like a prep for episode 2 or just a late recap of what you saw in episode 1. And Josh, what'd you think? I liked it. I thought it was a solid opening episode.
Yeah, man. It's just welcome back to Westeros is right. Like we're deep back into the intrigue, into the intensity, into the characters, just everything that made season one great is here in season two. And it doesn't seem like it's taking its foot off the pedal at all. Like, not to say that this was a super fast-paced episode, like it was kind of on the slower side, but in terms of like um how they're addressing the show, I just feel like it's not, it doesn't feel like most season ones to things where it's kind of like, okay, things are kind of reset and we're going to kind of
Mhm.
start some new storylines. It's like, well, maybe they did that with the North, but like for most, it's just like, okay, we're just continuing on from last season.
Yeah, I think they did a really good job in this opening episode of like walking the line of let's continue the momentum, but also it's been 2 years since we last saw an episode of the show, and there are a lot of characters already, and a lot of people forgot who everyone was. And so they did a really good job of giving all of the notable characters things to do that describe them really well. So you were able to pick up, okay, this is the dude who did that, this is the woman who did this, et cetera, et cetera. And so I felt like for casual viewers, they were able to jump right back in and get a refresher, but also it continues the momentum. And for those of us who are more involved and make podcast reviews, we just kept on going with it right away. Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked how it didn't hold your hand at all though. Like you said, they did have an introduction of like most of the main characters of the season. So an example what I'm thinking of is a show that did this just okay. Like I liked it and everything, but was The Boys, started at season 5 or season 4 this week.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fine. Like I've been liking the season. It's fine and everything. Like I'm not talking bad about The Boys, but it definitely feels like it's a new season, like there's some new arcs that are happening.
Yeah.
Like it, and I'm not going to give spoilers for it or anything,
Like,
but even
okay,
like with
here's the
some
new
characters,
characters for
yeah,
this
here's
season.
right,
Here's, the new thing we've got to deal with Homelander. Right.
right. And so it's not like I'm enjoying the season. I'm not trying to give like a negative review to this season, but this just, it definitely feels different with like House of the Dragon. It feels like they're like, okay, you're back in it now. We're expecting you that you've done your homework. We're just picking up from where season one went. And like you said, they did it really well so that you can kind of be reminded and see familiar faces and everything. But yeah, it feels like it's okay. We're off keeping the momentum from season one going.
Hmm. So we'll dive into some more detailed things, and this is going to be full spoilers for the episode. Obviously, we will not do spoilers for future Fire and Blood stuff, although I might tell you like, oh, this person is important type of thing, but I'm not going to obnoxiously spoil any plot points. So overview, right? We have all those minor things which we'll get into with different characters, and then it gets the momentum going for the last like 15 to 20 minutes with the adventures of blood and cheese. Maybe I should say the horrifying adventures in King's Landing.
Yeah. Honestly, if you hadn't given me that heads up um, from last time we talked, from last episode, and also I was talking to Hayden, who hopefully will be on in future reviews. Um, but and so he had mentioned that something dark was going to happen early on as well. I would not have seen it coming. Like the episode seemed like it was winding down. It seemed like maybe that was just going to be set up for next episode, and then
Hmm.
nope, it like went hard.
Yeah. And so, yeah, so if you didn't see our previous episode that Josh was referencing, I I knew that this was going to happen because of Emergency Awesome's comments about episode one where he said that something really dark happens on the level of the Red Wedding, and this is like kind of another infamous event in the fandom. They did. I don't want to say that they pulled punches, but it definitely was not as dark and menacing as it could have been. And I can kind of tell you what happens in the actual
Y-
text
Yeah, I want to hear it.
of the book.
I did watch Hello Future Me. He had a video about episode one, and he talked about it and said he was kind of disappointed by the changes that they made, just because
Yeah.
it made it less of a focus on characters and like, anyway. But I want to hear what your thoughts are about it.
So high level, the things that were changed. Well, I guess maybe not high level. I'm gonna talk some details. So instead of the twins, Jaharis and Jahara, I'm probably gonna get names wrong, so forgive me. But instead of the twins that were the focus, at this point in the actual written narrative, it was Jaharis and his younger brother Maelor. I think they reuse the names all the time. So those two boys were the ones that were being like that Blood and Cheese were forcing Helena to choose between. Jahara does exist, but she was just like not involved, and that was the two boys that they made her choose who they were going to kill. And she chose Maelor, I think, because he was younger, and they ended up killing Jaharis instead. So there were those differences. Also, when they went through the palace, they first ran into Alicent. They killed her bed maiden, and tied her up because they knew that Helena and the boys would be coming in to like kiss their grandma goodnight. And then they laid in wait for them to come in, and then they surprised them like and killed Jaharis. Like the whole thing is just like much more menacing and dark. This kind of made it seem like a failed heist rather than a purposeful murder of a child.
Yeah, and if I if I'm remembering what Hello Future Me's video said, he was also hinting that Rhaenyra may have been much more like directly ordering the killing um of the heir of the throne, right? Not just Aemond,
Yeah,
but
I don't remember. I mean, the way that I'm not, yeah, I don't know if I have
I
any
think
comments
yeah,
on
I think
that.
he made it seem like she was more complicit in it than
Mm.
what the show made it out to be.
I mean,
Which
the show made it seem like she said, "Get me Aemond," and she was basically talking to Damon with that, and then Damon came and interpreted that and tried to make it happen. But I'm pretty sure in the text it was more of like a direct, let's go after one of the heirs. Like they were wanting to kill the kids rather than, oh, let's try to kill Aemond and accidentally kill the kid.
yeah, and I kind of feel like here's one kind of nitpick that I have with the show. It's that it seems like Rhaenyra keeps getting let off easy with the decisions that she makes compared to the books. I haven't even read the book. This is all just kind of like podcasts and YouTube videos they've watched that kind of compare the two. For example, like Laenor, that was her husband's name, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the book, I think that it's that they did order his death, right? Um,
I don't remember those types of details. We need Hayden on for
yeah,
this.
and we can break these down, but I'm pretty sure that that's the case. And then like with this, she wasn't really complicit at all. I mean, well, Aemon would have still been bad, but that is more just straight retribution. I feel like that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of an eye for an eye type thing, where maybe not completely justified, but you can see where she's coming from at least.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of where it seems like they're making it easy to be on Rhaenyra's side right now, versus if those things would have been different, then it'd be a lot harder to side with Rhaenyra, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you feel like after this episode, the maybe not in terms of who's winning, but in terms of who's more justified, does it seem like the blacks are more justified in their action other than Damon, being a wild card and just like throwing a grenade into the into what's going on with the Greens. Like,
Yeah.
and he
I mean,
just
again,
loosed two killers and said, "Go kill."
it's really hard to know. I think that it does such a good job of making you go back and forth. Alicent is so hateable and Rhaenyra is so likable, in a lot of ways. Like, I feel like
Hmm.
they want you to like Rhaenyra a little bit more, but I think that that's because it's harder to root for her in general. Um, and maybe I'm in the minority for saying that. I don't know. But that's just my feeling, especially because Viserys was not clear with Alicent towards the end. Like she did have that experience of him at the ending, like really making her believe that Aegon was supposed to be the heir, her son.
Right,
Like, she
right.
she truly believes that that was his wishes. So I think she's pretty justified. But then Aemond and Daemon just, throwing these grenades into the whole mix make it, a lot harder for
Hmm.
either side to be justified.
Hmm. I think one thing we talked about was season two needing to continue to like play up the Rhaenyra Alicent relationship because that was really at the heart of most of season one. And I feel like this episode did a pretty good job with that. And the best part was when they were having the funeral for Luke, right? And it was flashing between Rhaenyra grieving and also Alicent like lighting a candle for him. Um, and that stuff like that kind of justifies Alicent, and I don't know, is justified the right word. It just kind of like humanizes her a little bit more than most of the other Greens. But then at the same time, you have her being a total hypocrite with her relationship with Crispin. So
And we can get to that, but real quick before we get to that, because I do want to talk about that and see what your thoughts are. Um, I do feel like each of them are the ones trying to show restraint while everybody else around them is begging for war.
yeah,
Like Damon and Aemond, or who we already talked about, but even like Corlys, I guess not so much Rhaenys. Um, I think Rhaenys is also like respects her for showing restraint. Um,
well,
and
everyone else is around the table, moving the pieces around and trying to
yeah,
get the support of all the noble houses, and they're not openly at war yet, but it feels like everyone else thinks it's inevitable, and some characters want war more than others. I mean, I would say that like Aemond and Kristen, I said Crispin accidentally
yeah,
before, but yeah, uh, they are openly trying to go the extra mile and make their war plans, and Daemon certainly is ready to go on the other end. Yeah.
yeah. Um, which I do like. I do like that our two main characters are the ones trying to show restraint, especially when it comes to like actually using dragons. I feel like what dragons are compared to. I mean, they've been compared to like F-16 fighter jets, right? Isn't that some quote from J.R.R. Martin or George R.R. Martin? Is that like he was like, oh, if you had like an F-16 jet and you brought it into battle or something. But
Mm,
I feel like this is also the characters are kind of using dragons as like mutually assured destruction. Like we can have some skirmishes or we can have
yeah,
some
kind of,
battles,
yeah.
but the minute we involve dragons, it's just gonna get way, way worse, So it's
Right,
almost like kind of more like
right.
nuclear, like game
Because
theory. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, right. Because as soon as we bring dragons onto the field, they're burning up the crops and killing the small folk and causing a bunch of long-term problems
right.
instead of just killing our disposable armies that we have plenty of.
But everybody else just maybe because they don't have as much respect for dragons in general, but everybody else is just like, yeah, let's go. Like let's do this thing. That blockade's not an issue. We can just fly a dragon up there and burn the blockade down. But
Mm,
the minute you do that, then a dragon attack is in response, and then it's just how it goes.
right, right. Which I guess, I mean, that's probably the thinking that goes into let's get support from everyone else in Westeros, because if we can show the other side that we've got, enough to prevent, if we can show the other side that if it comes to that, we're going to win, then hopefully. So yeah, basically the mutually assured destruction type of thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh, okay. Kristen Crispin Cole.
So yeah, no, you had some
I don't
thoughts
know.
on
I
this.
think
Yeah.
the question is, or a question, an important question, kind of in my mind, was this affair, this love tryst going on before Viserys died, after Viserys died? Like, is it new? What are your thoughts? Because I think that does change like the overarching morality of the situation, kind of how I view Allison as a character.
Hmm. It seems kind of new, you know, new enough to where she's saying like, "Whoa, we're never gonna do this again." Like, I feel like you don't say that if you've been together for a month, but you might say it if it's like a week.
Well, I'm thinking, is the difference like years versus like a week?
As far
Like his.
you, well, I
So,
mean, if it's been going on for that long, I don't think you say something like that.
well, I think you might because okay, here's my competing thoughts. One, if she got pregnant with during when Viserys was alive, well, everyone would just assume it was Viserys's heir, for sure, because her and they're pretending like it is with Rhaenyra as well, even though that's
Mm,
like totally
okay.
genetically different. So she might have been like in her head, like, oh, if I get pregnant or ask for tea or whatever, then everyone's just going to assume it's Viserys. Versus now, if she gets pregnant, it's a problem.
But still willing to risk it, it seems.
Apparently, yeah, yeah. But but so, I, but the thing is, in my mind, it's like almost more and more. I obviously think it's more morally wrong if she like her husband's still alive and she's doing that, even though I mean, he wasn't really up to
Mm,
husbandly duties, but like still,
right.
but versus if he had died and she had like held off on those desires until her husband was dead, that seems a little bit more classy to me.
Yeah. I mean, but I think in terms of like the perception of the court, and it's probably not
Doesn't
okay
matter.
either way too much. Like the queen would not be respected either way if this was to come out.
Maybe, yeah.
And when I say not respected, I mean her name would be dragged through the mud, and it would, it would be ugly, right?
I mean, every queen we've seen in Westeros has done this or worse, you know.
Well, yeah, and some of them end up, walking through the streets naked with the shame bell going off.
Yeah, that's true. But like, I don't know, like um Danny never thought it was that big of a deal to have her flings.
Hmm. I mean, she didn't really have like a royal court as much.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah. I feel like this is certainly, if it were to come to light, it would be a big problem. But either, that aside, it's like you said, it's super hypocritical of
yeah,
her,
that's the other thing.
based
Yeah.
off of season one and the whole conflict with Rhaenyra and the strong boys, right?
Yeah. And that's like her whole justification for like war almost is that these aren't like the rightful heirs because they don't have, you know, um Targaryen blood or Valyrian blood,
Mm,
I
right.
should say. and and then she's just off with the same person. It's almost like she wants to have her cake and eat it too. Like it's pretty messed up.
Yeah. I don't remember if this happens in the text or not, but yeah, it is interesting. Hopefully we'll have Hayden on for future episodes to kind of clarify those types of questions. But anyway, other characters. Let's talk about some of the more minor things. So we get Starks. That was kind of fun. We get to see the wall. We're back in Winterfell for a second. I think that was a nice callback for, casual fans, people that watched a bunch of Game of Thrones. These are obviously familiar locations, and we love the Starks, so here we are.
Yeah, definitely agree. It was nice to be back there. And that is kind of like an okay, here's a new storyline, new season, new storyline. I
Hmm.
think that was fine to introduce right now.
Yeah,
Um, it was a little bit,
it will be really interesting to see how much they do with the Starks, because as the conflict evolves, different houses obviously have different roles to play. And if they use the Starks more now, it's going to be a change from the text. But I think it's
really.
fine if they do. And I think it would be a fun additional group of characters to follow. But we'll see. Yeah, what were you going to say though?
It was a little weird to me to see Jace like grow like 3 inches and have a ton more hair.
Yeah,
Because
he grew up a lot
especially
on that
because
dragon flight.
yeah, and especially because we hadn't really had the timeline established yet for sure, you know? Like when we do know it's been like okay, it's been like a few days, like a week or something, like,
Mm,
a very short amount of time.
yeah.
Um and so that was just getting back into the episode, that was kind of weird for me because I was like, oh man, it's been a bit when I saw Jace, but then it came back and like, nope, Rhaenyra just has been still, spending a few days looking for, which is also
Yeah,
sad.
yeah. There are
It's
those
not like I don't
logistics,
really be
but
that like critical of it because actors age. Um, but with how much they switched around after season one due to actors aging, like it, you know, I think that they could have done a little bit better job, maybe establishing the timeline before you saw Jace, because that threw me off. That's all I'm saying.
gotcha. I think it was interesting seeing Jace and Kragan Stark. I think that's his name, right? Both fairly young men that are discussing the future of the realm, and how different that is from Game of Thrones, where we had all of these, kind of grizzled graybeards, at least at the start, that were hashing things out. And I think it was kind of fun seeing these two fairly inexperienced guys forging somewhat of a friendship.
Yeah, I like that. That was cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was fun to see. Did you notice the big sword that Kragan had? That's
Yeah, that was
that's
Ned's.
Ned's sword. Ice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was cool.
Valerian still lasts a long time, man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Okay, what other characters? We talked about Rhaenys a little bit. We could talk about Rhaenyra like looking for Luke. I thought this was pretty well done. It was cool how she really only had one line the entire
Yeah.
time, but the performance just like conveyed so much, and the juxtaposition of how Damon gave her nothing by way of like, emotional support, but then she does break down with Jace, and so you get to see how dysfunctional their family is. But at the same time, she knows what Damon can do for her and for the conflict, and she's telling him, go kill Aemond for me.
Yeah. Um, that was powerful. That whole performance was amazing. Like you said, if you would have asked me how many lines she said in that episode, I would have been like, I don't know, a ton. Like, because you find out so much about it, but then like you did bring
Mm,
it up, like, oh yeah, like one line, like a couple words, because her performance just conveyed so much. I thought that scene with Jason, her, where he just comes in and is like struggling to, you know, convey like his message, and then they just both break down.
oh,
That was probably my favorite scene of the whole episode. It was just so well done, well acted, well like earned,
yeah.
and they didn't overdo it. It wasn't filled with like melodrama. It was just like it was exactly how you would think it would go down. Like, okay, I'm just gonna go
Mhm.
in, I'm gonna say my bit, and I can do this, and then you try and do it and you're just like a mess. Like I just feel like that's exactly how a situation like that would play out. And they just yeah, it was awesome. It was amazing.
Like us as the viewers, we're definitely gonna sympathize a lot with the those performances of on-screen grief. And so that may be why we're thinking, about go Blacks. They're having a hard time right now. We got to cheer for them. They're having these emotional breakdowns. Interesting to see what happens in episode two, when it's going to be the Greens now. Aegon. young father whose son has just died. Like, do we get the same type of powerful performance on that end that makes us sympathize with them?
Yeah, I mean that is going to be harder because one, we don't really like Aegon all that much. I mean, he seems
Yeah.
like a, I mean, I don't know. He's not
Well,
like a
I mean, I'll
Joffrey.
be honest. He was like, I kind of liked him in this
I do
episode.
too. Yeah. I just it does seem like okay, if you put like a 16-year-old as a king, which I'm not sure exactly how old he's supposed to be. I'm assuming like 16 to or 16 to 21 somewhere in there.
Yeah, I mean, all the characters, the ages are all over the place, but yeah, they're all basically teenagers.
So some either like young man, somewhere in that young man range, right? If you just put like somebody like that on the throne and said, "Hey, you're king now," like that's exactly how I think 99% of them would act. 95% of them would act.
Yeah.
Like, or a lot, well, no, never mind. A lot would be a lot worse, right? But you have seen like I don't know because I did just do a rewatch of season one, and there's that whole storyline where he goes to like those like gambling houses where they make children like fight and kill each other. Like he's a pretty like in season one you don't like him as much,
Mm.
you know. Um Season two, like this episode, he seemed like, okay, I'm gonna try and become king. I'm gonna try and get my act together. Like I'm still a little bit, young and belligerent
I
about
mean,
things, but
yeah, not really taking things seriously, but at the same time has
well,
kind of a good heart where he's like, oh yeah, give the sheep back. This guy needs a sheep.
yeah, exactly. Like I don't think he was taking things unseriously. I just don't think he had ever
Well, I mean, he doesn't really take
he
the
wasn't
conflict.
being
He shows up with his
scrupulous.
son at this small council meeting and
Well,
doesn't really
looking
pay
back now,
attention to the
that's
war that's happening or
I guess with the Sun thing, I think looking back, it's obviously there just to like build that, like give you a little bit more emotional stakes to what's going to happen.
yeah, yeah.
But even so, I mean, yeah, that's kind of like treating it like it's a joke. But also, here's a young man that's like, I wasn't prepared to be king. So if like there's a war coming, if I die early and now my son is king, I at least want him, even if he's only 10 at the time, like at least he'll have been in like these small council meetings. I don't think that's entirely wrong for him to do.
Hmm. Yeah, sure. Yeah. I'm sure that's somewhat regular. I don't know, but he's kind of young, so maybe not the best move. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
again, if there's a war coming and your king's like, I know my kid's only 6 years old or 4 years old or however old he was supposed to be, but you know, I don't know. Like all I'm saying, if I have a 6 and a 4 year old, and if they were going to have to be king after I died, if they were my heir, I'd probably be bringing them to those kind of meetings and tell
Hmm.
people to suck up buttercup. You got to deal with a kid grabbing your little ball talking thing that somebody had just got their head smashed on a few episodes before.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
A few other characters that are introduced. Well, okay, two more important ones. So remember the scene with Corliss where he's talking to the shipwright guy that saved him. His name's Alan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that guy has a role to play. So he's
That
not
that
just like he didn't do much, but he's a character.
that one kind of is another one of those storylines that did seem like it kind of came out of left field a little bit, or not. That's not the same, but like kind of came out of nowhere. Was or felt a little clunky, I should say, in the episode. It was nice to see Corliss again, but it was like, oh, and here's this guy that now I owe a debt to. Da 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 da. Like, what's gonna
Hmm.
happen? But it was fine. Yeah,
Yeah. One of the things in season one that I didn't really love was the whole conflict around Corliss, just like he is dying just out of nowhere. And years had passed. And I felt like that plot line more than this one came out of nowhere. And this is maybe just kind of a
sure,
continuation of that.
sure. Yeah, it's a good point.
Anyway, that guy will be important. So watch for that. Also, the Smith that showed up, one of the petitioners, his name's Hugh. He asked for more iron, I think, in order to build scorpions. Or no, he has to be paid up front, and he seemed like a reasonable guy. And Aegon grants his request. That guy is also a character that will be important. So
Oh, that's
both
good to know.
those, yeah, they will both recur. Sometimes you don't know, like the sheep guy. I don't think that guy's anything, but those two are in fact important.
Gotcha.
What else? The Eric and Eric twins, don't forget about them. They have they have a role to play as well.
Yep. Man, Damon was ruthless with him. But that was another one of those like small conversations that just makes you think. Like, I swore an oath to protect the whole royal family. What am I supposed to do when they start betraying each other?
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know, like, yeah, I mean, it's a catch 22, and of course, if you're on one side of it, you're going to be like, well, you should have picked my side, but you
Mm.
can also sympathize. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, stuff like that and stuff like basically everything that happened with Rhaenyra shows that the writing continues to be top tier and it conveys so much in clever ways. And it continues to, I mean, we've seen one episode and it's maintaining the same high quality from season one. So I am very much looking forward to continuing to watch.
What about do you have time for a few more characters?
Oh yeah, yeah. What else? I guess
Laris.
Otto and Laris.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Laris and Otto. That
yeah.
guy,
Kind of
man.
on opposing sides. They seem to be manipulating each other. Kind of like a
Yeah.
it's like a Varys and Littlefinger type of
Yeah.
uh I
Well,
mean
so
different roles obviously, but
well, I
the
I
counselors, the
think
scheming counselors.
I think that Laris reminds me a lot of Littlefinger, actually. Like
Hmm.
an unrequited love, a oh, I'm not sure if he really loves Allison or just has fetishizes her. But either way, same with Littlefinger
Hmm.
with Sansa. Um,
And
but
Cat,
then
yeah.
and Cat, yeah, I think he genuinely had a love for Cat, but I think he fetishizes Sansa because it's Cat's
Yeah,
daughter.
fair. Yeah.
Um, yeah, but then, just the way that they work with the spies, stuff like that. I think that Otto kind of reminds me of Tywin Lannister in the way that he puts his house above the needs of the kingdom, but he's not like a totally
Mm,
he's a ruthless guy, but he's not like what was the line? Like it needs to be violent, but not wanton violence, right? Like I think that both of them kind of exemplify that. Like they're not afraid to get their hands dirty, but they don't want to have to do more than they have to do.
mm.
It makes for a really good antagonist and villain, and I think that they both do a really good job of that. So
Yeah, yeah, good pull. Very, very similar characters. I feel like Tywin, with more of Tywin's children on the table, you get to see a little bit more.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, Tywin has a big disdain for Tyrion, which makes him all the more hateable, because of that disdain. But if you took his relationship with Tyrion out of the picture, I think that the comp would be even better. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And Otto kind of, I mean, I guess he's got the grandchildren. The grandchildren are people that he's basically just manipulating and
yeah,
using and doesn't really seem to have much love for them.
yeah.
And I mean, we could question how much love he even has for Alicent, other than, she too is a piece to be moved around and manipulated. I mean, it's more like the success of the house is more important than the love for any individual member in the house.
Right. And because the house is a reflection on him.
Yeah. Yeah. Other characters you wanted to go through? I feel like we
Yeah, I
hit
think we got a lot of
most
them.
of it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, the big thing was the blood and shoes thing. We didn't talk about Helena at all. I mean, it seemed like at the end she was basically in shock, and she's strange in interesting ways already, and so it'll be we'll have to see where this event is going to take her.
She's a really easy character to like and root for because she does seem more innocent and
Mm,
it's but the only thing is just the whole history of Game of Thrones and not really paying off these mystery boxes. It does make me a little bit worried.
mm.
Hopefully
I
they
mean,
will though. Hopefully.
we basically saw her prophecies fulfilled, right?
That's true. Like the
Like,
beast beneath the boards and the
yeah, and being
rats,
afraid
being
of the
scared of the
rats. Like,
rats.
yeah, that stuff was all referring to this event.
Yeah. So maybe they're trying to do a better job of paying those things off, like within the same season or even the same episode, but
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the whole prince that was promised thing is still fairly unclear, but that's a little bit of what George R. R. Martin goes for. Like that's his take on prophecy and magic, is it's got so many interpretations, and so it's really kind of up to how people take things rather than like one solid fulfillment of things. And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, okay. So we've got episode 2 coming up. I think we'll continue to do weeklies for most of these, maybe not all, but for most. If you want to chat with us about anything from House of the Dragon or anything else fantasy or sci-fi related, you can join our Discord. Invites are in the episode description. We do monthly book clubs and just have conversations about pretty much everything across the whole spectrum of science fiction fantasy. So hop on there and let us know your opinions.
Nice. Thanks, Steven.
Cool. See you, Josh.